Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. We are super excited this week to welcome Pat Wilson, who is also a fellow board member for Advanza. Thank you, Pat, for being with us today. He is with the Profitable Associations. He is the president and founder. Welcome.
My pleasure to be here, Aaron and Lucas.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Lucas, my partner in crime. Hello, how are you today?
Doing very well, thank you.
Good. Well, we had a couple of really great conversations and some blog articles as a result of our conversation with Louis Flax last time. Thank you again, Louis, for being a part of the show. But it certainly has provided us a nice little springboard to have this conversation with Pat and all the work that you do. I'll start off with my first question. In knowing what Profitable Associations does, one of the things is that you act as an extension of associations teams, specifically in the sales area and other areas. Given that there might have been a lot of employment changes with associations, I'm just curious, how has that shifted your business over the last couple of months?
Yes, so first thing I would say is in the last 7 or 8 months, where did those months go? So
It's November 3rd.
I can't believe
Election day, go vote.
Yeah, so our model means we join at the hip. We embed with association clients. And if I could show you my drawer that has business cards, it's my name on 8 or 10 different associations, business cards, letterhead. I have some golf shirts as well. So I would say we've been in 3 phases this year. And the initial phase had to do with events in the springtime that were canceled, and there wasn't enough time to convert them or go through the pivot. And so our role and our mission at that time was stewardship. And it was really just helping the association manage their budget. And ultimately what we did is we went on tour and re-engaged with the sponsors and exhibitors. And it was an appeal to pay that paid amount forward. So it could buy the association time and kind of let them retool as they figured out the rest of the year and looked into next year. So we had some success with a couple groups. I'd say if the consultative engagement was able to occur, we could get upwards of 65 to 70% of the revenue staying with the association, but it was like reselling it all over again.
Right, yeah. Great. And
Those
Lucas, what about you? Because I know you do some of this extension of others' teams as well. How has Advanza sorted out that?
Yeah, we've sort of recognized 2 opportunities through this whole last 9 months. One is by a vendor who is providing affinity programs and by nature discounts for members. There's been a lot of more traction for folks looking for services where they can save some money. And then from the association perspective, we've talked a lot, Aaron, and you've posted some great articles about driving revenue, not just cutting costs. So we've been able through those programs to help associations generate more revenue, but also be, just as Pat is, an extension of their workforce as an advocate for them to help them with marketing, finding the right vendors, and really working with their members, again, as we said, as an extension.
Yeah.
So Pat, the second phase was the summer, and now there's enough time where the association's event, maybe it will go from live to virtual. So also, you asked the question about layoffs and furloughs. That started to occur. And think about who's involved in putting on a live event. You have the meetings department,
right?
You have accounting involved with the association. You have the facility, you have the food and the beverage, you have the AV companies, you have the general service contractor. So a lot of those entities are either not in the picture, or in the case of some associations, unfortunately, those positions are getting laid off. So normally our solution includes filling the gray area. So when it went from a live to a virtual event solution, we really became the fill the gap, do whatever is necessary to activate that event, that program, and that value.
That's really helpful, I'm sure. And you spoke to the fact that you were able to retain about 70% of the revenues. Last week, we talked with Lewis about how organizations really needed to think about leading with something other than just their signature event. How have you seen your ability to transition those live events to virtual, and helping to build up that value proposition for the customers that did stay and retain their revenue?
Yeah, so I kind of look at it as in the old live event model, we've lived with this value proposition. If you think of it like a pyramid, okay, so we've had the titanium, the diamond. I don't know what's more valuable.
Right.
Then
I've always wondered that. Platinum,
platinum, gold, silver, bronze, whatever.
bronze, yeah.
Yeah. And you have the descending order of the companies who correspond to those levels, and you have your rank and file exhibitors. So the new value proposition in a virtual event, it's almost like you have to take that triangle, that pyramid, and turn it upside down. So it's an inverted pyramid. And in the, again, we talked about the canceled events, it was an engagement tour. So that's what occurred in, the shift from, from the live to the virtual. And so the value proposition now that matches the spend, perhaps, it's higher level aspirational type benefits like thought leadership and education and access. And then it may or may not have to do with a 3 or 4 day window around the conference. It may translate into something that starts before, continues after, or as we look ahead to next year in scenario planning, that's the opportunity, I think, to look at the whole year. And so if you look at your top supporters, the previously gold and higher, I think the key is the relationship. You really do need to reach out. You need to trial balloon before you sell.
Right.
And I think it's really up to the association, who's ever doing that on their behalf, to really develop this solution with those stakeholders and treat them as real partners.
Yeah, that's a great point. We talked a lot in prep for this particular episode before we got on live here to talk to you all. And some of the things that came up were, and specifically because you are an extension of the sales team, you obviously can put yourself in the mind of a salesperson. One of the things that struck me as interesting when we moved from live to virtual events was that there might have been a lot of focus on marketing, brand recognition, brand placement, things like that people think most normally when they're thinking about sponsorship, they're focusing on what's the marketing ROI. But we forgot almost that, the events are attended typically by live people, usually salespeople who are there to network and mingle. What have you seen in the virtual events, or have you seen anyone do anything really innovative to keep those types of guests and attendees active and making the connections that they need to make as a result of these types of conferences going virtual?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of lessons learned. We all have this year. I think we've attended some happy hour type events, right? That were, what were they? A Zoom call with 100 people looking at each other, raising a glass, and somebody making a toast. And then what do you do?
Or maybe playing a game with our friend Deidre Daniels.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was going to say is the Deidre type solution, a very interesting game. That was a revelation. We were participating as a sponsor in an event. I want to say it was late July, early August. I played Deidre's game and the Eureka light bulb went off. And I thought, for this association lineup of an event that's now virtual, we really need something that's interactive, fun, engaging. So it's like structured format fun. And it is fun for the audience as well. So that was probably one of the bigger takeaways. Those networking, coffee breaks, happy hours, they were always in that category of how do you deliver real value? So if you're a sponsor that's tied to a session and the program, that's a little bit easier because you can roll the sponsor video and integrate the brand. But in the game, you can integrate the brand, you can make it fun for everybody. You can even bake in questions of the sponsor. So it kind of covers all those bases.
Yeah, anything I think that is interactive for those that are involved. Number one, playing a game. I think that's great. The other thing I think is key is bringing those small groups together and having a moderator in there that's interesting or funny that can sort of drive conversation. And then that sort of brings me back to all the stuff that I really liked about live events, which is, talking back and forth, getting to know each other. It's not just sort of a hard sell where Some of the virtual platforms are, you're waiting in your virtual booth, and then you get a couple of minutes with somebody, and it's like you almost feel obligated to hard sell them, but I'm not a big fan of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that, this all just brings up a lot of questions around how do you as an association or as the event organizer think about helping your sponsors, your clients understand how they need to look at ROI now. And we talked a little bit about metrics and click-throughs and email addresses and contacts and everything like that. But I think it's also a recognition that your clients, your sponsors may also be going through this time where they're freaking out going, I don't even really know how to sell this back to my boss of how I would spend the money on this thing that I can't really explain now. Pat, what are some of the pieces of advice that you would give around that?
Yeah, so I would say you have to look at each association by itself, right? So John Graham, longtime leader of ASAE, he had a great saying that I'd love to hear. It was, if you've seen one association, you've seen one association. Right? So, and Lucas, you know this from your, it's like you really have to get in there and have them see you as part of the family, but then it's your job to continually evangelize internally and externally. So I kind of say the key word is, we talked about value, but it's empathy. And I really think it has to be active and it has to be continuous. Mm-hmm. And in 2020, we were all in survival mode.
Right.
I think planning for 2021, we need to be intentional and we need to be purposeful. And I really think that association has to really understand who the stakeholders are, and they have to give access to, what maybe previously they categorize as vendors. Okay. Right. It doesn't mean they have to bring 400 into the fold equally, but I think if they go from a stratification approach, maybe several dozen are really the most valuable stakeholders. It's possible you could give them access, exclusivity, and something special that really maybe increases their spend, because now they're an exclusive company and they really are viewed as a true partner. You can build this program out over the year.
Yeah, I've said for years that associations are all about relationships. And for the first few years in the association market, which is a long time ago, that relationship for me was as an outside agency or an advisor to the association. It was the relationship with the association. And as my experience grew, it's really about our relationship with the member. Because if the member has the right experience, they relate that to value to their association. So the association wins through the member actually finding the value and having the better experience. And so it's a little bit of a paradigm shift for me over time, but think about the relationship that we have, Profitable Association in Danza and others with the members, and how can we make, the best for them.
That's a really great point, Lucas, because I do think sometimes we lose the forest for the trees, if you will. We think about this direct relationship we have. We're negotiating our sponsorship with an association or an industry, right, and we're thinking about those two pieces, and often the customer at the end of the experience might get lost in that. And so, it's a win-win if you make sure that customer at the end of the journey is happy. Both of you end up really.
It may be in your stratification and your numbers game. It may be that the days of 400, 500 exhibitor events are going to have to go on the side burner, right, and it's really, making it a much smaller number, because I don't know if you have that exclusivity to right, spread around, it's going to be saturated. So I think you might be able to come up with maybe 60, 70% of what you previously had as the non-dues revenue source from smaller number of companies, mm-hmm, but you also have some cost savings. You're not going to have the travel, the food, the facility, and some of those moving parts that go into the live event. So you may come out of it, an association may come out of it in 21, doing things way differently, but maybe a leaner set of costs, lower level of support revenue, but maybe the margin or the net revenue is not too far off from what they would hope to have.
Sounds great. Well, I know we always try to make these short and sweet. Pat, we really appreciate you bringing all of your expertise to this session. As we always end these episodes, 6 Degrees of Associations is a name that we chose because we want to make sure we're connecting our audiences with all the right people. So, Pat, who would you elect that we network with and get on this show that our audience could benefit from?
So I would say, you want to have fun guests and you want to have creative solution providers who know the industry. You had a few of those already. Recently, I met with a client who does advertising, and I've known their company for a few years. They are a digital marketing expert called Feather, Feathr. I don't know if you know Feather, but
I don't, but I'm excited to learn about them.
you've got to meet Katie Brown. I would say Katie brings the fun, brings the gratitude, and her boss, the CEO and founder, Aiden Augustine, maybe the two of them would join together, but one or the other or both, it'll be a win and a good time for you guys, for sure.
Awesome. Katie
Great.
Brown coming for you. Well, thank you
Thank
so much, Pat. Thank you, Lucas, as always, for bringing your expertise to the conversation. And we look forward to seeing you guys back in 2 weeks on 6 Degrees of Association. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pat.